Hello and welcome to Chymera, Britain's only book festival celebrating science fiction, fantasy and horror writing. My name is Anne Landman and I'm the festival's founder and artistic director. Right about now, I'd hope to be welcoming you to beautiful Edinburgh, to our venue The Pleasance, for a weekend packed with events. Writing workshop, panels, readings, open mics, a quiz, a ceilidh, 2 plays. We had so much in store for you. Thank you for joining us online instead, to be part of our programme from the safety of your homes. We're very excited to still bring you a fantastic lineup of speakers. We'd ask you that you support our speakers, and there's many ways you can do that. You can buy their books or borrow them from the library. You can donate to them directly via their Patreon or Ko-fi. You will find the links for that below in the description. We encourage you to buy a ticket for our events, even the pre-recorded ones. All ticket money will go directly to our speakers. You can also donate to the festival, and all donations via the donation page will be split between our speakers, once we've covered our costs like the Zoom account. Thank you again for joining us in this brave new world of digital events. We hope you have a chance to check out all 33 of ours over the weekend. Please let us know what you think of them. Do get in touch via social media, the chat function in Zoom, or drop us an email on info@chimerafestival.co.uk. We'd love to hear from you. We hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we look forward to seeing you in person next year for Chymera 2021.
Shall we begin? And shall we begin by getting you to introduce yourselves for those of us watching who may not know who you are? Kim, would you like to start us off?
Of course. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here, even if it is in slightly strange circumstances. So I'm delighted to be a part of the festival. My name's Lakin-Smith and I am a science fiction and dark fantasy writer. I have written to date 5 novels for adults and young adults. And I've also written a fair number of short stories. My work tends to feature outsiders, which is a particular fascination of mine. And it always tends towards the dark, maybe the bleak even. I have been accused of that, but I'll take it, I don't mind. And I think today we're going to be talking mainly about my new book, which is called Rise, and it features a lot of subjects I'm very, very passionate about.
Very good, thank you. And Gary, would you like to introduce yourself to the masses?
Of course. Hey, everyone. Hey, masses. Hello. My name's Gary. I've been writing comics, graphic novels for about 10 years now. My work tends more towards being kind of Joss Whedon-esque in a mix of drama, try to wrench tears out of people, but at the same time, it's got a lot of comedy and quite a few silly aspects to it. So yeah, my book series Plagued, which is going to be mostly the talking point today. There's 3 volumes of it. I first started writing it in 2014. Jeez, that's a long time ago. It's the thing I'm most known for. So yeah, I do a variety of kids and young adult stuff. Most recently, I've been writing for a kids licensed comic, but I can't reveal it yet. That'll be news hopefully in the next few months. And doing some TV development work, so pitches for like animation and writing for stuff like that. So yeah, so just all sort of sci-fi action, most of my stuff as well, fantasy, just because I kind of love that kind of thing. Yeah, so yeah, that is me.
Okay. Well, in that case, let's get straight to it about picking apart your books, both of you. So both Plagued and Rise, we have a main character who initially belongs to sort of the oppressive force. In the novels, Mackie is obviously a witch hunter to begin with, when it turns out he's actually a witch. And Callie is viewed as a traitor to the Bleak, but she is in no way sympathising with the Vari either. So why did you both choose to have a character that starts from that point?
Well, for me, I kind of was fascinated by Lucifer and the concept of the fallen angel, and by the idea of a father, in this case with Lucifer, the Almighty God, rejecting their child, and how society as a result could perceive that person as the epitome of evil. And this concept of evil really kind of began to resonate with me, because what is evil? Where do these things come from? And where do we develop our own sort of value-based systems, which is where a lot of Rise was inspired from these sort of things. And so initially I'd kind of written the opening to the book so that we sort of saw Carly, who is an ex-lieutenant for the Bleak Guard, entering the prison camp. And then I decided I actually wanted to ground it in her background, for us to see how skilled she was, for us to see the reality of the huge gunner warships, and for us to understand quite how rooted she was, quite how completely entrenched in these belief systems that the Vari were lesser, were subhuman. And for me, it was an interesting exploration of, could we have sympathy for the devil? Could we really understand a character who throughout the book actually maintains her prejudice against the Vari, and whether or not it was possible for there to be any sort of redemption for a character who has been responsible for the order to kill hundreds of thousands of these Vari people.
Okay.
Amazing. I really want to pick up the book now, Kim. I'm just going to order it just now.
Your stuff too.
Just 2 seconds, I'll order it. Just, yeah, for me, I'm fascinated by the idea of characters changing. It's always quite a critical part of storytelling, is how they develop. And to have a character on the other side is often the most dramatic change, the change in belief system. Also, I like to believe that people can change, that if you're a certain way due to ignorance or belief systems you've been brought up in, that more information and exposure to different types of people or exposure to new information can in fact change you. And it was really important for me, just because when I was younger, you know, I was a completely different person. And now, years on, I've developed, I've changed. And so Mackie was kind of an avatar for me in that sense as well, of when you grow up and you get properly aware of the world and out of your own wee bubble, you start to learn things and you go, oh, well, that thing I believe, maybe that isn't true, or, oh, I didn't realise that. And that's a fascinating process. And I wanted Mackie to go through that journey and learn beyond his world. And I think it is just such a good dramatic device as well, because it sets up, in my book anyway, it sets up like the buddy cop format where you've got two opposites having to work together. And I just think it's a fascinating journey to take people on.
That's certainly very fascinating novel. I've read through, of course, all of Plagued leading up to this, and yeah, just the sort of the natural dynamic of the two as they sort of come together and start working together even better as every issue goes on is just a really great story. Don't even need the evil corporation in the background.
Just for the mix, but yeah, I like the dynamic back and forth of opposites.
Mm-hmm. Well, leading into opposites, we can talk about the other in each of your books. So in Plagued, we have witches who are reviled as the source of the plague. In Rise, we have the Vari who are treated as subhuman, despite the fact they are just human, really. Let's face it, they're not too far away from what the bleak are. So why did you choose to have this other group in your novel? What did you hope to explore with those groups?
Well, it's interesting that Gary was just talking about how we change and our own experiences, and obviously how they inform my writing. For me, I've always identified with otherness for various reasons. I wore hearing aids as a child, so I've always had a fascination with body modifications in my work. I also grew up with a foster brother who was black in a village where there was only 2 children who were black at the time, and all of the prejudice that I witnessed as a very young child with that. And then as a teenager, getting into rock music and into geekiness, and again, finding that I was in a subculture, right through to my own family, with my daughter who is bi and my stepson who is trans. And so having a huge interest in the LGBTQ community. And then now, as a cancer survivor, finding myself in another group where I'm actually receiving letters and they're telling me to do certain things, and then texts saying, now you are free, now you can go back out into the world. And I kind of wanted to understand prejudice really, really deeply, how anti-Semitism came about, and these kind of core belief systems, can you challenge them? And Rise came about, the initial idea was kind of around the time of Brexit, and a lot of talk of immigration, and seeing how families could be divided, let alone on social media with flame wars about these issues, and how it really seemed to come down to a nub of prejudice. And just at the same time, I was kind of aware very much of my own family's inability to be able to go to certain countries safely. And I wanted to understand how all of this could kind of underpin a physical and a mental perception that other people were different.
I think for me, sci-fi and fantasy is a good way to explore themes of oppression and prejudice in a more, maybe not a subtle way, but in a more subversive way. I mean, I can't write really from the point of view of anybody that's been particularly marginalised, but it doesn't mean that I don't believe or feel very empathetic towards people that are. And sci-fi is a way to explore that without hijacking somebody else's story. So I can tell the story about witches that are, oppressed and blamed for the ills of society, that many, groups of society are, but I can't particularly tell their story. So this is a way to explore something I'm passionate about, something that I think is important, in a way that is also entertaining, which, good stories do, they entertain, but they slip in some nice wee educational points and things that make you think in the background. Also, the good thing about sci-fi and fantasy as well is that because they can be quite subversive in that way, and forgive me because I don't remember the time period or the situation, but I remember reading somewhere, which is always the worst thing to say when you're starting a conversation. Oh, I read somewhere, because that is the problem with the internet nowadays. But I think it might have been like a history of sci-fi book to do with university, but they talked about how when certain books were censored, sci-fi and fantasy books slipped through because the themes they conveyed were much more subtle because it wasn't distinctly about a group, and they got through like censor hands, and people reading them could understand subversive messages. So that was interesting. I just don't remember the where and when. Like, I'll need to Google it after this, and I meant to Google it before, but yeah.
We'll put it in the comments on YouTube so everybody can know.
I can be totally torn apart and proven wrong, which I will welcome because that's a scientific method and I will always change my mind on things. But I'm sure there's an example of that in history somewhere. So yay, sci-fi and fantasy.
Definitely. I mean, if we didn't yay sci-fi and fantasy, none of us would be here right now, would we? So look at technology and how it represented both books. In both of them, we've got it used as a sort of a form of control. In Rise, we've got the obvious, the Nyx, the sort of the restraint device that can kill a Vari the moment it's activated. But you've also got the idea that the source of a gunner warship's power is ancient Vari technology that's been co-opted. And then if Plagued, we revealed partway through that there's actually the cure for the plague isn't actually doing anything at all. It's just keeping the company's pockets lined. So we've got technology sort of as a means of control there. Do you possibly believe that in our world today, possibility for that sort of dystopian control through technology exists?
I was thinking about this, and I think the Ristniks were kind of inspired almost by like kind of Fitbits and this idea that we could have our kind of biometrics in some way monitored. And I sort of did a bit of research into this at the time, and there are actually some really fascinating examples of quite scary use of biometric data harvesting. For example, in 2015, it's probably quite a famous example, in Hong Kong, there were billboards and people were displayed on the billboards, but they weren't actually photographs. They were actually renderings made by a computer. And it turned out that these people, they had littered with chewing gum and with cigarette butts, and their DNA had been extracted and had resulted in this computer rendering, and it was meant to be an advertising campaign that's anti-littering for the city. And this idea that corporations could gather this kind of information and use it for commercial use, it's sort of an interesting dynamic, really, because we've then got this kind of idea that hospitals and airports can be using certain biometric data as a safety sort of precaution, as smart technology meant to protect us. But then our password actually being biological in that way, we could never change. So how does data hacking influence that then in science fictional terms? Because obviously we have the Data Protection Act, but what's interesting about that is that it's actually out of 6 sort of lawful grounds for processing the data. The one that actually is touted as least significant is consent. And so I think the idea that a slight flaw in one of these huge databases could result in a large-scale data leak is something that kind of fascinates me, and I find a bit creepy. So, yeah, that side of things I'm kind of interested in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Hong Kong thing, I'd forgotten about that story actually, and it was just a little bit terrifying. What's possible? Yeah. I like my sci-fi to stay on the page, please.
Yeah, that is creepy. I've never heard that before. That is genuinely quite terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez. And yeah, like sci-fi is better on the page. Like, you know, when I kind of thought, you know, how about like a sort of young adult story set after a plague, super sci-fi, and then here we are, and it's pretty weird. So either my book's going to be really popular or it's going to absolutely sink because nobody wants to read anything about plagues.
There's magic as well, so that saves it.
Yeah, it's got magic and hope in it. That's the pitch to keep it going, you know. But yeah, I mean, to just to jump on Kim's point there, you know, scary data I think is the big thing just now. Cambridge Analytica what they can do with Facebook data is pretty horrible. And I think from Plague's point of view, it's all about what happens when people value profit. People value profit over people, double people there, can be damaging. I think one of the main sort of villain who runs the company that caused the plague was based off, do you remember Martin Shkreli?
Oh, yeah.
The pharma bro, and how he bought like the rights to like produce AIDS medication, and he jacked the price up by like 800% or something like that. So he was an influence on that. Just like how I just don't understand how people can be psychopathic and do these things. You know, it's fascinating in a sense that people can do it, because I'm a very empathetic and moralistic person. But I think, you know, technology in the wrong hands can definitely be bad, and Plague tries to explore that. The intent of what you want to do with it, because the one thing I worry about Plagued is people think that it's anti-vax or down that route because it's bad people claiming medicine, but it's really not. I mean, I take pills every day for epilepsy. Magical, that's produced by a private company. So Plague's not about conspiracy. It's about what if a big company could own everything and cared completely just for profit. And you know, people like that are out there.
Yeah, and that is the scary thing. But
So my book's meant to be about being hopeful, isn't it? So
yeah. It's there.
Magical cure though, so it's all good. We cure it through magic. Boom.
Actually, leading on from all that, obviously, Worlds of Plagued and Rise are pretty extreme in their sort of dystopian. This is as bad as it could get, sort of thing. But do you feel that there's any elements of our world today that, if left unchecked, could lead to these sorts of situations in the future? And what do you think from your own point of view, the role of science fiction and fantasy should be in sort of exploring or warning against these?
Well, I think alongside entertainment, which is obviously essential in any sort of stories, yes, to me, I think they should. So, to me, it's incredibly naive when people think there isn't prejudice still in the world in a really vicious and malevolent type way. So for me, I have a character called Groff in Rise, and he's an openly gay man, and he is branded with a P for perversionist, and he lost his partner, who was taken and executed by the National Guard for leafleting on behalf of the resistance. And I wanted Groff to sort of have hope still, though. So he's quite an amusing character. But I think it's still vital to me that people kind of understand that there's countries like the Maldives where you still receive 20 lashes of the whip. There's still 9 countries in the world where you're put to death for being gay, and there's still 7 that carry the life sentence, and then an awful lot of countries where the sentence becomes lower but is still considerable. I wrote down actually some statistics from this website called Just Like Us, which is for LGBTQ youth charity. And 25% of LGBTQ attempt suicide, 50% self-harm, 86% still hear homophobic remarks. So I think these kind of things are really kind of crucial sometimes for us to address as writers when we're telling stories, is to try to look at the way the world is today, and whether or not we in our own way can try to put out some form of entertainment that has a level of didactic quality to it as well. And also kind of touched on one of my favorite subjects, which is religion, where again, I think certain extremists, but also just the nice lady going to church can be can stir the pot in some way and can uproot these kind of really quite unpleasant feelings towards other people simply through a belief system.
Yeah, I mean, the question was about being a warning, wasn't it?
Yeah, it suits you, science fiction,
Sorry,
fantasy.
I don't go around the houses there.
Do you know, I'm just thinking, like, I mean, I don't know if it's too late. Like, I'm getting really bad vibes about 2020. Like, I think.
Can we just give this one back and start again?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, exactly. Can I get a new 2020, please? This one's broke. I mean, there's a plague going on just now, and the world is aflame with racism and prejudice. So it's totally bonkers just now, and worrying and frightening. And I do hope that there is. I do hope that there is hope at the end of it, and that, you know, goodness will eventually prevail. Life isn't a story. Life doesn't always have a happy ending, but I want this one to have a happy ending, you know. So I think fiction can be a warning. You know, there's been speculative fiction that's looked at scenarios like that we are actually facing just now, and yeah, I mean, I don't know what else we can warn against. It's already getting so bad. Like, you know, I suppose as long as we digest media that reminds us of, if things are in check, they can get to this stage, and hopefully we all learn from history. Yeah, I'm sounding quite bummed out, but yeah, it's just a bit rubbish. You know, yeah, I think, you know, from people that are frontline and doing the absolute real work of improving people's civil liberties, or fighting to improve circumstance for any group of people, I think it's important for maybe the people that are on, like, the back seat, like me, you know, to tell stories that might at least inspire as well, you know. And I think as long as we keep on doing fiction that can warn of how things can get worse and how things can maybe get better, based on the decisions that we collectively make as human beings. But I don't know. Will books even be published next year? Who knows? I don't know.
It'll work out. We'll be fine. There's chances. Shall we move on to a bit of a happier one then? Because there is hope in both of your stories. To be fair, in Rise, it does come as a glimmer at the end, for one of our characters, not for a lot of them. In Playing It shows up a lot more. We've got a lot more hope cropping up throughout as the story progresses. So looking at that sort of role of hope and the actions of our heroes, which do you think is more important to the resolution of your stories? Is it the actions of the characters themselves, or is it rather sort of the hope that they bring with them?
I think personally, for me as the writer, I'm attached to the characters and they're dear to me. And I would hope very much that there is a level of redemption towards the end of Rise, and a glimmer maybe of that we all come right in the end somehow. I would have to say, to a degree, I think maybe they are the puppets that tell my story on behalf of the Vari community and community as a whole worldwide. And that actually what's at the crux of Rise's stories, that the whole book is underpinned by the idea of stories. The Vari have their own family Bibles, which are passed down through generations. And these stories are told by a figure called the Speaker, who is nominated by the community. And Carly's counterpart in the Vari is Mohab, and he is the speaker's son, and it's about his resistance to taking on the role and his eventual understanding that stories are dangerous, that stories have power, and stories can convey secret messages, that they can have hope in them. And that, to me, from Aesop's fables through to Harry Potter, through to Star Wars, this idea of good versus evil is kind of quintessential. And it's something that we all want to explore, and the blurring of those lines, really. But I would really, really wish that in reading Rise, people find that there is a light, not just darkness.
I like that. Yeah, from me, I think the community plays a big part of it towards the end. Spoilers, maybe, but it's fine. It's still good. Still buy it. Still read it.
It's good. Do buy it. Do read it. It's great.
One of the things I wanted to do is because the witches were, they're blamed for causing the plague, which then ignites the witch war, and then the evil company Renico, they develop technology that quells their powers, and that's kind of the backdrop to it. But with Miranda, and then a witch coven you meet later on, I wanted to sort of not make it so black and white. So I introduced the whole idea that, they were during the war, they were active in it, and they did commit murder. They fought against the humans once the war kicked off. Not the humans, but the non-witches, the people on that side. So I wanted to muddy the waters a wee bit, but not too much, because it's still very young and fun and light. But I wanted that it's not only the people who believed witches were evil and supported the organisation that repressed them had to develop and change their mind. I also wanted it that the witches who were now hell-bent on revenge, which was Miranda's coven, that they also came to an understanding that a more peaceful resolution was the best way forward. When we meet them, they are pretty much saying to Miranda, why are you trying to cure these people with magic? They slaughtered us in the witch war. They turned off our magic and then just hunted us down and killed us. What are you doing? So Mackie and Miranda sort of, both their dynamics, they both sort of brought their sides together. Again, spoilers, but in the end, so that's, I think, how they influenced the community was a big part of their character arcs, and how they sort of both broke free from, actually parental figures were big influences in them. The big bad guy, witch hunter Salem, he's a sort of surrogate dad to Mackie, and Miranda's coven was like a family unit, and so they were both had to sort of break out of that and forge their own path, and then bring what they've learned back to them, which then, spoilers, that stuff happens from there.
Stuff happens from there.
Good stuff.
But yes, there's not too many spoilers there, because a lot goes on in between everything you've said. So you haven't given much of it away.
Lots of talking dogs and jokes. I don't think I've got any fart jokes though, but I'll maybe use that in my next one. Okay. Fart joke.
Preempting my next question a bit there.
Is it a fart next question?
No, well, so obviously Play's gone through quite a good few issues, and we've had a nice ending to the story there. Rise is a pretty self-contained novel, but would you ever like to return to these worlds and either explore what happens next or pick up on a thread that you want to expand from there and explore a bit more?
Do you know what? Hell no. No, Rise required a lot of research into very dark subjects. And
not a happy one.
No, not particularly. It's something I felt I had to do at the time. That it was almost like, I guess, kind of my own demon I needed to face. I think really, given the fact that life is a bit crap at the moment, sort of stuck in bed all of last year, recovering, and then this year I'm not allowed out the door. So it's kind of like, to me, I've got to search for something happy. So my next book, I'm determined, is going to kind of go back a bit to when I first started writing, and there was an awful lot of action, very much influenced by kind of the hot rod scene and motorbikes and the whole rock scene. And I think I'm going to kind of dip back into there because, I think it's time for a bit of rage and a bit of fun.
Awesome. Would I go back to Plagued? Let's say hell no as well. No, actually, I tell a lie. I think when you're creating your own worlds, your own stories, it's out of passion. You get writing gigs which are financial. You're playing with somebody else's toys, but when it's your own story, you're passionate about it. And at the time, again, I felt as if I had to write that story. Not only because it was a mix of genres of sort of comedy and sci-fi, young adult that I was passionate about, but also to explore the themes I wanted to explore. 2014, what was going on then? Racism in Britain's been going on for a long time. So I think, if I recall correctly, it was around the time where there was a lot of talk about immigration that spurred it on. And I sort of just mixed that in with like other things I liked. Like I liked post-apocalyptic worlds and I liked talking dogs. I was like, just fucking put them together. But I had a good run with it. I wrote 3 volumes over a period of, how many years is that now? 6 years?
6 years, yeah. Was it just last year? Was the last one? Or was it 2018?
6.
I don't know what time is anymore.
The last volume was last year now, yeah, so it was 5 years. And it was great. It was a learning experience for me as well. It was the first time I'd been published with graphic novels. Before that, it was all self-published comics. And it was an amazing experience, but it's kind of like, it was good to finish and go on to something else. I do have stories, ideas to continue it. Like as part of my work on it, I wrote up like a pitch Bible for animation. And I've got a pilot script as well, like a 20-minute script, if it ever get picked up. And I plotted stories for like 3 seasons worth, and I've got 3 books. But I would maybe, if there was a huge demand, yes, because you're creating stories when you're passionate, and my passion is now in exploring other stories. But if there was a huge financial demand, that if I wrote Plague, then I'd be as rich as the evil guys in my books. Then I'd go right back to it. I've even got a title for it. If it came back, it would be called Plague: The Miranda Legacy. So the title's there, and the concept would be there. It would be years later, and it would explore lots of other fun. So maybe, never say never.
Fair enough. Just one thing I wanted to pick up there from you, Kim. You were talking about how Rise was something you needed to write at the time. How long did you have the idea in your head for? Was it one that had been sort of bubbling at the back of your head for quite a while, or?
Yeah, Rise was a weird one actually, because originally it was going to be 4 different timelines, 4 different stories. And it was going to have a kind of Cloud Atlas feel almost, with characters reoccurring in different timelines and exploring the same kind of concepts. And eventually all the other storylines just fell away. And I introduced Grismar, who's actually the grandmother of Carly. And she ended up becoming almost like the unifying thread throughout the book. Because she represents both kind of the bleak background, but also she's got very much a pragmatic view on the world, and a sense of shame, actually, that her own son ended up becoming this kind of dictator. So, yeah, I kind of completely lost my thread there. Sorry. Remind me again.
It was just sort of how long.
Yeah. So it's been About maybe 4 years. I think I did my first reading from it 4 years ago. And it's just kind of evolved gradually over time.
For that, it was the length of idea. Was that the question? Yeah.
Yeah. So you've had plenty of material for Plagued, writing it for so long. But when did you start thinking about it, or was it a bit just sort of you got the idea and ran with it immediately and started writing?
Kind of. Actually, writing Plagued was something just for me. When I think about it, right? So I'm going right back. So I was writing a story that was actually a bit more of a dramatic art house graphic novel style story, and it was about a woman returning back to her hometown because her twin sister was murdered by a gang she used to be involved with, and she sort of builds up a friendship with this with a black man whose son was murdered by police, and it was to explore the concept of justice and revenge. And I just couldn't write it, right? I couldn't write it. Like, it was too heavy going. I think, I was a younger writer at the time. I could maybe do it now. And it was quite difficult to write. And maybe it kind of goes to that whole thing where, like, it's speaking to experiences that I don't have. And maybe that's why I hit the block. So, like, I put it down. I thought, okay, I just need to write something fun. And then that's how Plagued kind of came to be. It kind of explored quite similar themes, but it was just a much nicer, a package that I could write comfortably, because it was more in my natural style anyway to be a bit more comedic, and B, it felt more appropriate for me to do. So yeah, I totally forgot. I don't think I've not really told anyone what the concept for that first story was. The more I speak about it, does sound pretty cool. I might go back to it, I don't know. But
Write it.
Yeah, even if you don't write it straight away, keep the idea bubbling away. You'll never know when you'll go back to it.
Do you know, Kim, do you have lots of ideas that you always just have, and then all of a sudden it will crop up, or you'll take an idea and then put it into one of your other stories if that idea goes away?
All the time. It's kind of like a patchwork of things that I kind of put together.
Yeah, I love that. Like, sometimes, like, I've got about maybe 20, 25 scripts that have become nothing.
Yeah.
Just because I'm practicing, or I've abandoned it, and it's like either character traits or plot developments. I'll go, oh, that actually fits there, and just go, boom. You can build blocks and gaps in your, like, stories you're working on. It's quite cool.
Exactly, and I think that's actually kind of what makes the story really interesting, is combining these unexpected elements, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Another thing that I love about sort of all parts of this industry, my day job is in publishing. The thing they drill into us early on is reuse your content, because you never know when it'll be relevant again, or maybe it wasn't right at the time and it'll come together. So it's good to hear it from the author side as well, that keep it around. You never know when it's going to crop up again, or maybe you just get that inspiration to get it used.
Exactly.
So I think that's just about covered everything. So obviously, Plagued available from BHP Comics. Rise is Nikon Press. Obviously, if anybody's nervous about getting books delivered to them at this moment, I did my reading for this panel digitally, and I can confirm that digital editions work really well for both of them. I just want to shout out to Tanya, the artist for Plagued. I love the style.
Yeah,
it just fits so well. There's a bit of things like the Beano in there, but you still get across the gritty, like, sort of dystopian sci-fi setting as well, and it just blends so well with your comedic writing.
I'm ordering it immediately.
Do so. I went down the rabbit hole. I intended just to start it, and then it was lunchtime, and I lost all my time. My tea was cold, so it was great. Loved it.
I owe you a cup of tea.
I'll hold you to that, Chymera 2021. You owe me a cup of tea. So yes, thank you so much for this afternoon, both of you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to everybody else seeing this on the Sunday of Chymera. I'll do my wee shout outs. Obviously, if you've enjoyed this and if you want to see Cymera come about in 2021, hopefully plague free, we are a charity, so you can donate to us, or you can optionally pay for the price of ticket for these events, whatever you choose. But hopefully you've enjoyed this wee panel, and hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of Chimera. So thank you very much, and goodbye.